welcome to Sid Caudle and our special, of course it's special, Nigel's committed Harry Carey. So the papers would have us believe. Has he overstepped the mark, Sid?
Well, it's not as simple, straightforward as yes or no. I think the media have been blowing it out totally out of proportion, but it does appear that he didn't follow the rules strictly as required. But there are a lot of extenuating circumstances around it, and the impression that the media have been giving have been making it far worse than in reality it is.
Yeah, and we talking off camera, we've been mentioning hypocrisy. My goodness me, the hypocrisy of the Tory party, particularly, and Labour, indeed, in all this, all the parties are against him. And my mind goes back to Brexit. It took years, decades of courage to face down the whole of Europe. For whatever we think of Brexit, whatever we think of Farage, that took some doing and he won. And they're frightened like mad are the blob. Dominic Cummings has stated this months, even years ago. You've got a target on your back, Farage. Watch out. And we've said, to be fair, over the last couple of years, they're going to get him before anything serious happens. And they are doing just that.
Well, yes, and we've seen it all before. We saw it with Boris Johnson. I mean, they got Boris Johnson. I mean, I don't think that what he did was actually that significant. Far less significant than what Keir Starmer's done. But nevertheless, the media absolutely went for him and kept going for him until they got what they wanted, which was his resignation. But what's going to happen when Nigel Farage? I don't know. If we can just talk quickly about what's actually happened. I mean, there's two people that are involved. One is somebody called Chris Harbourne, who made a gift to Nigel Farage of £5 million sometime before the general election. It was months before the general election, and at the time, Nigel Farage wasn't intending to stand in the general election and wasn't involved with the Reform Party other than as president, which was largely a nominal title. So, but he wasn't involved in the day-to-day activity of the party. Now, why he made that £5 million donation is unclear. By the way, Chris Harbourne is worth something like 280 billion. So to him, £5 million wouldn't have been an enormous amount of money. But he says that he made that donation out of favour, just to thank Nigel Farage for what he'd done and so on and so forth. But I don't think we can conclude he was expecting much in return, because at that point Nigel Farage wasn't even standing for Parliament, let alone being likely to be in a position to be able to do favours for him. And that is an issue with political donations, because normally political donations tend to have something attached to them. The people that make the donations want favours, and people that made donations, like you highlighted one company that made a donation of £4 million to the Labour Party just prior to the last election, and they were almost certainly wanting something in return, and it appears it was some contracts with green energy, which the Labour Party were very much favouring. That's what they wanted. So that's why they made the £4 million donation. And that is normal. We've seen it a lot in the Conservative Party, and you see it over and over again in America. It's normal in America for people to try and buy the candidates.
Yeah, and let's be honest about this. The Green Movement, who they quoted, fine, okay, we won't disturb the ripples in the pond, let that go through. Farage, more legitimately, he wants 5 million in this case to protect himself for life, which is a blooming good deal if you work it out. And they trip him up. So much hypocrisy in all this, Sid. You've got the Sainsbury clan supporting the Labour Party for donkey's years. Finish it up with a peerage. Surprise, surprise.
Yes, well, as I say, it is normal in politics that people make donations and expect something in return, I'm afraid. And this is one of the things about Donald Trump, you see, because Donald Trump is sufficiently wealthy that he doesn't need to go and get donations in order to run his campaign. And he actually said at one occasion, he said, I could ring up anybody from the top 25 executives of the S&P, which is the American Stock Exchange, and he said I could get donations off them, but they'd expect something in return. So I'm not willing to do it because I'm not willing to be in hock to them to be giving them something in return. Now that's what Trump has actually said, and I believe he stood by it. And the reason why he's been able to confront the establishment in America to the extent which he has, fire people left, right, and centre, get rid of an enormous amount of corruption in the system, is because he didn't take donations from these people, so he's not in hock to anyone.
Yeah, the other thing in all this, of course, is Sky News, and there's more hypocrisy if you want some. They've been taken over recently by America's biggest communication and broadcasting arm, and they've got clear links with the left, the well left of the Democratic Party, and they have dug this out. And I repeat, the word hypocrisy keeps coming back. And who do you believe on the media? Even the Telegraph said today are anti-Farage. Of course they are, because they're pro-Tory. Now, if the mainstream media, let's call them part of the blob even, because they are, there's very few outlets. There's GB News that Nigel Farage can put his own spin on things. But the rest of them, he's got a real problem, hasn't he?
Well, yes, he has, and they're able to go for somebody. I mean, but before we move on from Nigel Farage, I do just want to say the other thing which they've been accusing him of is taking money from a fraudster. And the person concerned is somebody called Graham Cotterill. Now, sometimes the media have confused the £5 million donation with the fraudster. Well, Chris Harborne, who made the £5 million donation, has never been convicted of any crime whatsoever. So we need to be clear on that. The two are not tied. But the media have confused it so that it appears to be the same thing. It's not. But they're accusing him of taking money from Graham Cotterill, who was convicted in the United States in 2017 of wire fraud. He pleaded guilty. He was given 8 months in prison and fined $30,000. The 8 months was counted for the time when he was when he was arrested in custody, and after the hearing he was immediately deported to the United Kingdom. So that's what actually happened. That was in 2017. Now there's issues immediately with this, by the way, with the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act, because that basically says that none of this should be brought up. It should be should be extinguished. So that's one issue. But he didn't actually apparently give any money to Nigel Farage. What he did was to pay for his security and allow him to use some premises. Now, they should be disclosed. But again, all this was long before the general election. So again, Nigel Farage said, well, this has nothing to do with politics, because at that time I wasn't active in politics. So I don't need to disclose it because I wasn't active in politics. But this is where there is clear hypocrisy. Because I can guarantee you, if the Labour Party had to repay every donation which they'd received from somebody who'd been convicted of an offence which warranted less than a year in prison, then they will be repaying 1,000 donations, I can tell you.
Yeah, the other disappointment this morning for me with Kemi Badenoch, quite frankly. She's good at the dispatch box, but I wonder how deep it goes. She was criticising Farage for not voting on a particular incident that the rape gangs, especially the Rochdale Oldham Brigade, and they at last woke up the Conservative Party to the fact of the reality of this. Oh, and we weren't helped that particular occasion by Farage. Well, hang on. You've been in power for 14 years and you did nothing about Rochdale and Oldham and the rest of the country. Sometimes Sid, I don't know how you cope being a politician. There's such amount of the H word again, the hypocrisy word.
Well, yes, so I have noticed with Kemi Badenoch, I don't know who it is, whether it's her or whether it's some advisors behind her, but she can raise things that frankly are petty. And saying, "Oh, Nigel Farage didn't vote on this particular vote in the House of Commons, which was an important vote." Well, this happens all the time. People miss votes. I mean, I'm sure there were numerous Conservative MPs that would have missed a vote. I mean, you can't be permanently in Parliament, there for every single vote. And when you've got 8 MPs, as Reform have, I mean, you can't actually change the vote. So it doesn't make much difference whether you actually vote or not. I mean, it's not like that vote we remember with Tony Blair for the Incitement to Religious Hatred Act, when the fact that he didn't vote meant that the amendment didn't go through, where if he had voted it would have gone through. I mean, that sort of situation where you can say, well, he should have been there because it changed the result of the vote. That's never going to happen with this Parliament with Nigel Farage. So quite honestly, raising an issue and saying, well, he wasn't there for a vote is petty. It's extremely petty. And forget about it. Talk about the issue. And as far as the issue is concerned, we know full well that Nigel Farage is totally opposed to grooming gangs. And to try and claim otherwise is utter nonsense.
Agreed, absolutely. Finally, said, I think Farage was absolutely right to say this is an opportunity to fight back against the establishment. We are fighting for the soul of the nation, politically and spiritually.
Well, yes, and if I might say so, I became very aware of this back in 2003 when Ian Duncan Smith was leader of the Conservative Party, and there were 2 issues which they were absolutely furious with him over. One was over the European Union, which he was a Eurosceptic and very much against our membership of the European Union at that stage, which was long before UKIP rose. But he was one of the people that, if you remember, John Major was very scathing about the people within the Conservative Party that were Eurosceptics. And Ian Duncan Smith was one of them, but he was then elected leader of the party. So they really had it in for that. And then the other thing was he was a committed Catholic. And as a Catholic, he was opposed to same-sex relationships. And Tony Blair in 2003 was introducing a new law to say that for the first time homosexual couples should be allowed to adopt children. Now, Ian Duncan Smith opposed that and had a 3-line whip of the Conservative MP saying them, we must oppose this because it's immoral and we've got to think about the interest of the children. And this is not putting the children first, this is putting the homosexual couples first. So he opposed it. Now, there were 30 Conservative MPs, led by Alan Duncan, that revolted. But there were also people inside the shadow cabinet that also disagreed. And the 2 key people were Michael Howard and Theresa May. And when Theresa May made her speech in the Conservative Party conference that October, when Ian Duncan Smith was still leader, saying we're being perceived of as the nasty party, most people don't even know what she was talking about. But what she was talking about was not allowing homosexual couples to adopt children. That's what she was talking about. Michael Howard was engineering behind the scenes and effectively engineered the removal of Ian Duncan Smith as leader. But in the run-up to that, the media absolutely hounded him. I mean, I remember that I remember on one occasion, I was in the car listening to what was then PM Report, 5 o'clock, between 5 and 6. Breaking news. It's been found that Ian Duncan Smith is employing his wife in the constituency. Another scandal that's just struck, and then interviewing. Even when they had the expenses scandal, they said that employing your wife in the constituency is perfectly permissible. He's done nothing wrong. You know, but they were trying to blow up scandal, scandal, scandal. There were no scandals. It was all media manufactured. And it was all media manufactured over the EU and over not allowing homosexual couples to adopt children.
One mustn't forget about this time Anne Widdecombe mentioning about Michael Howard. There's something of the night about him. True words.
Well, yes. And you see, the thing is actually, after he got rid of Ian Duncan Smith and he stood in the 2005 election, at that point people had had enough of Tony Blair and would have voted him out. But it was better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. And people wanted Tony Blair out, but they didn't want Michael Howard in. I can tell you, if Ian Duncan Smith had been leader of the Conservative Party in the 2005 election, he would have won the election. Because the media had it in for him, but people in the country didn't. People in the country liked him.
Well, the revolution is about to take place. Golly, if there ever was a need for prayer in a nation, Sid, it's now.
Yes, absolutely. But you see, we're told in the scripture to be as wise as serpents and harmless as doves. So what we're talking about today is understanding what's going on. So we're not just sort of like, oh, isn't it terrible what Nigel Farage is doing? Isn't it terrible what he's done? And yes, he's got to resign. And isn't it terrible what Boris Johnson did? And oh yes, he's got to resign and whatever. We've got to understand exactly what's happened, see what's really behind, what's really gone on, and basically realise Nigel Farage has done very little wrong. There is an issue over donations, and in principle, under the Electoral Commission rules, he should have disclosed those donations. However, what were the Electoral Commission doing when Peter Morrell was stealing £400,000 from the SNP over a period of 12 years? Why weren't the SNP investigating him? Why didn't we have reports saying that Peter Morrell has been involved in a massive scandal and it was all over the media? They didn't, because the Electoral Commission liked the SNP. They don't like reform, so they're constantly investigating reform over anything that they can possibly find. And it's wrong.
Just as wrong as, and Farage has pointed this out, of course, the committee that's investigating now. What a joke. That's so far to the left as not to be true. It's a kangaroo court almost. And as you say, Sid, we've got to look what behind the newspaper headlines here. And we need discernment for that, if ever we did.
Well, yes, I mean, when you think that they didn't refer Keir Starmer to the Standards Committee, even though he had very obviously lied to Parliament, and even though every party in Parliament wanted him to be referred, other than the Labour Party. Yeah, but of course, Nigel Farage can be referred to the Standards Committee because he doesn't control Parliament. But the Labour Party do control the Standards Committee. So, yes, he's absolutely right. It's a kangaroo court.
Well done, Sid. Thank you so much. If there's any more breaking news, we'll be on air as soon as we're able. Thank you so much.
Cheers.